We are about to start. I am Rafi Mustafa, the community lead for EdTech channel by Cohere Labs, and today is our first speaker session. And with our very special guest, Dr. Joe Stewart, is an educational researcher who helps practitioners and school systems develop and implement innovations that support students and teachers as well. He runs Rocky Mountain Research and Strategy, where he has led projects focused on EdTech innovations in math and literacy learning, student well-being, and how school systems build and sustain their own innovation from ground up. I'm very honored to have you, Dr. Josh. The ground
Yes,
is all.
yeah, thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to present to you all today. Let me start by sharing my screen, and that way we can use that as kind of a guide for our discussion. But Rafe, thank you so much for the warm welcome, and yeah, let's get started. So
Yes, very excited.
yes, me too. Let's see. Okay, and then let me do, let me make sure I'm sharing as a presentation. Okay, hopefully, is that coming through for y'all?
Yes.
Excellent, okay. So thank you for the warm introductions. Again, I'm Josh Stewart, founder and principal researcher at Rocky Mountain Research and Strategy. And today I'd like to focus on education technology and how it interplays with mathematical learning. And we're going to spend a bit of time talking about executive functioning and how I think education technology can help improve and kind of bolster executive functioning that's really critical for math learning. I've been able to work on a breadth of projects, and we're going to talk a little bit today about an initiative I've been involved in to help, I would say, improve or enhance math learning. But there's also a lot of other background here I'd like to cover just regarding insights on why this is important. So just to start, and this might be something that y'all are familiar with, but we know that human attention is a finite resource. There's a lot of research on the variability there. So it ebbs and flows, and it varies by person. But we know that distractions, task switching, these are all cognitively expensive. And so when it comes to training our attention on something that requires a lot of focus, that requires problem solving, that can be a challenge. And so when you're thinking about executive functioning, I'm particularly talking about that frontal part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, tasks associated with planning, problem solving, critical thinking, reasoning. Those are the tasks that we want to foster when we're thinking about complicated tasks like math learning. But when we get embroiled in distractions, when our attention is fragmented, when there's too many notifications and we're unable to kind of train our attention, then it becomes more difficult to focus on the task. So you might be familiar with this inverted U shape here, where we're talking about how there's like an optimal level or an optimal area for performance. And I think as this talk progresses, I'm going to talk a little bit more about how I think EdTech can help scaffold this. But you're all probably familiar with the idea that as we begin to dive into a particular activity, if it's really boring, if it's something that we're really proficient at, we're really skilled at, that's probably not going to be something that excites us, that we're going to stay in tune with. Same thing if we're kind of learning a new task, a new skill, if we're being introduced to algebra for the first time, and we haven't built up that skill set, it can be too arousing. It can be cognitive overload. And so we're really trying to kind of hit this zone of proximal development, or this optimal zone here in the middle. And I say that because while there's a lot of research on this, while this is kind of a well-known concept, when anxiety is too high, our brain kind of shuts off. When it's too low, we don't have that arousal to get us going. And so this is kind of the challenge that we're trying to address here with education technology. How can we use it to optimize our zone of proximal development, our optimal zone of learning, and maybe slough off or maybe have those little pieces that might interject that might cause us to get distracted, and what do those distractions kind of look like? So as we know, math learning requires sequencing, it requires a lot of memory, it requires monitoring, and it requires evaluating our process. If something went wrong, we need to have that cognitive flexibility to go back and figure out what happened. How can we fix that? And if we experience a lot of challenges, we may kind of come to the assumption that our math learning or that our math identity is just not connecting, right? So maybe we see ourselves as not being a math learner. And there's a lot of research to suggest that particularly subjects like algebra are areas where math is becoming more complex, more abstract. And if students really gravitate and foster that math identity, or if they really struggle, you can have this big split in terms of their trajectory of learning, where they might be put off from math and they might think, this just isn't for me, or they might really see success in it and they see application to their daily life, they see interest, they're having success with problem solving. And so we want to kind of think about mitigating that or trying to address that emotional load if it is something that students begin to struggle with, begin to kind of fear and begin to worry about. And so, like many things, anxiety can eat up our attention, can eat up our bandwidth to engage in math learning. If we start, into math class and we're thinking about it's something we're not good at, it's something that isn't within our locus of control, it can kind of destroy our attention. It can give us a sense of self-doubt. And there's a lot of stereotype threat, or there's a lot of baked in ideas about who's good at math and who's not. And even if it's something that we've traditionally had success with, as we get older and as we see or experience maybe some of those stereotype threats, it makes us anxious. And so how can we kind of restore that bandwidth and make it something that's fun? And two, it's worth noting that all cognitive load isn't harmful, but it is, and by harmful, I mean, it's not necessarily threatening in the sense that it's, something where we feel like we're personally not good at it, or maybe students like us are not good at it. But also we know that extraneous information can overload our senses. So if there's a lot of distractions in the classroom, if there's a lot of things happening around us, if there's a lot of technology that is getting in the way, that can also fragment our attention. And so I think this is a real challenge and an opportunity in the education technology space to sort of right-size the intervention, right-size the technology so it doesn't interfere, it doesn't take away from that learning with distractions. It helps kind of hone our critical thinking and our attention. And so really, when we're thinking about designing these resources, trying to design them in a way that limits cognitive distraction, elevates our mental capacity and our thinking and our critical thinking skills in the right balance. And so tutoring, obviously, I'm going to quickly touch on this, which isn't an ed tech piece, but it's something that really bears repeating when we're thinking about why education technology can be so important. So when we know that we're struggling in a particular topic area, we know that targeted tutoring is very helpful, but oftentimes schools don't have the resources for that. So, sitting down with a tutor, thinking about prompts, scaffolding our critical thinking, thinking about what went wrong, they can really help us get into that optimal zone I talked about earlier. So if our mind is going in all kinds of different directions, or if we're just struggling, they can help right-size the challenge so we have success. And that's another thing to really think about with education technology and with math learning. When we can have students experience that success, there's nothing more, I would say, demoralizing to learning than feeling like it's outside of your control, feeling like it's not obtainable. And so a lot of research in tutoring suggests that tutors can help mitigate that challenge, but they're expensive. They require one-on-one time with students. It can be disruptive to a class to have students coming in and out. And so how can we both foster that I would say individualized learning integrated into the classroom and give students the support they need where they need it? So I'm going to start with a little bit of history or a little bit of background on some common ed tech tools. I'll focus particularly on tools that are kind of used in the United States here. I'm sure there are a lot of other great ones abroad, but really when we're thinking about the key tools here, it's kind of thinking about supporting executive functioning and calibrating the challenge of the math learning to a level that's right for the student. And so I think there's still a lot of work to be done here. And I think there's a lot of room for new innovations, particularly in the space of AI, particularly in the space of learning that can happen at home for students. But really, when we're thinking about like a digital tutor, a digital kind of copy of that person that can right size the challenge, one of the first ones that comes to mind is the Carnegie Learning Curriculum and Cognitive Tutor. This was and is still used today, but one of the, I would say, earlier tools where we're kind of thinking about problem solving outside of, or helping students kind of scaffold it outside of their mental model. So just like with reading or any sort of cognitive task, what we're doing here is we're kind of scaffolding the student to think about multiple representations, thinking about how they can solve a problem in different ways, giving them hints and prompts if they're stuck that are connected to something that they can actually do and solve. And this isn't, I would say, particularly, in 2026, particularly something that you wouldn't. It's not particularly new, though I do feel like it was a great first step in kind of showcasing how just-in-time scaffolding prompts and multiple representations can help with that mastering. And it was also designed to be integrated into the classroom, so we're not taking students out, but we're able to kind of integrate learning at their level, wherever they might be struggling or wherever they might be succeeding too. Another challenge here is if we're kind of moving ahead of the class, if it's something we really like, but we're constantly kind of stuck with tasks that we've become proficient with, that also disengages our learning. And so we want to make sure that we're kind of hitting the whole spectrum. So this is a great way to start with that. And I'll talk a little bit about what research has found on this, but the idea was just to kind of reduce some of the cognitive load and embed it in the platform, embed some resources, some tools, some activities that can help, again, kind of scaffold and right size the math learning for the student. And I will say too, this is background. So for these first two initiatives, they've kind of informed some of the work that I've been really excited to participate in with a initiative I'll talk about in just a moment. You might be familiar with another program, Assessments. This is a widely used program. It provides hints to help kind of mitigate frustration and mitigate cognitive overload. And it can be integrated into the classroom. So if a student is struggling, a teacher can assign activities that are at that student's level, but it can also be integrated into the classroom. It can provide feedback to that teacher. And I think one piece that is really important for education technology is to give teachers that formative assessment, that formative information about where are my students at, where are they experiencing success, and how can I tailor my instruction for my class, for a particular set of students, with that formative data. And so one thing that I think Assessments is really great with is giving that formative data, and then also giving teachers a chance to send additional practice content, or even change the way that content is delivered. So if there's too much language involved with the math problem, it can kind of shrink it down to the more basic components of the math problem, so the student gains that proficiency and we're not struggling with kind of reading and mathematics at the same time. And so I'll say here is kind of where some of the work that I'm really excited about comes in. I've been privileged to be a part of EF Plus Math, which is an initiative of the Advanced Education Research Development Fund. And the whole goal here is to kind of elevate and fund unique programs that might otherwise not be funded through large government programs, large educational initiatives. The idea that there are sort of these long shot or highly innovative ideas that a developer or a program that needs to perhaps I would say start with maybe a more cautious approach, building off of maybe some prior work. But I would say here we're really focused on innovation. And so AirDiff really sought out to look at how to develop math initiatives, math learning, math technology that kind of can elevate and particularly focus on executive functioning. So the idea was, we know executive functioning is hugely important. We know that tutors are hugely important, but oftentimes schools can't provide everybody a tutor. And we know that math anxiety and all kinds of other distractions really kind of are attacks on our executive functioning. And we know that students bring their own lived experiences. They all come with different backgrounds. They may experience stereotype threat if they feel like, math learning isn't for somebody like me. There may be constrained resources. And so this idea that we really need to prioritize executive functioning as a catalyst to math learning was really the thrust of EF Plus Math. I'll put a link to the initiative in the chat, but the idea was to fund these radically innovative programs. We started out with quite a few and have kind of narrowed down the ones that have continued on to show promising results. But I would say across the entire portfolio of this program, we're currently working on a meta-analysis to see what are the primary components of an education technology or an innovative math program that is able to really tap into executive functioning, train executive functioning, and perhaps even build some capacity there. Yeah, I see a question. Rafe?
Yeah, so basically I wanted to ask, what if somebody wants to be part of this initiative? Because this is something very different, and I'm pretty sure people would like to join in. So what are the roles that, we can participate in? Maybe we can participate as researchers or some educators, or,
Yes.
You get my question, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I would say one of the best ways to get involved would be to there's a number of initiatives that AirDiff is funding, and they're always looking for contributors, for folks that are interested in helping develop or improve. So I think there's the one thing with the EF Plus Math, unfortunately, is that it's designed to sunset. So the idea was we're going to fund these innovative programs, but then the program has to come to kind of a close. So the goal here now that all of the data has been collected, all of the programs have been developed to elevate what worked, and we're going to be coming out with a toolkit that folks can use if they're interested in kind of embodying some of these executive functioning principles in their own work, in their own programs or their own technology. But there's also new initiatives, or I can't say what's in the works for AirDiff because my primary role has been with EF Plus Math. There's a way to get engaged on the website, and I'll put that in the chat. Unfortunately for EF Plus Math, though, the program's designed to end this year. So it's been going for 5 years, and the whole goal has been to kind of leave a mark on the field to say, here's what we found, here's where we're hoping to go next, and here's what you can do if you're interested in continuing on with this concept of really honing executive functioning and training it into your math learning environment. But I would say the education, or the Advanced Education Research Development Fund is I think always doing really cool things. Another program that they're focused on is reading, and a particular focus on students with dyslexia, English language learner students, and how to kind of do some similar activities to get them really excited and interested and see themselves in the curriculum. So I'd encourage you to go check that out. There's also a initiative there, Assessments for Good, which is just kind of thinking about using student data in new and different ways. So this one piece that I'll talk about, EF Plus Math, is kind of a slice. But I encourage you to head to the website. There's going to be evolving opportunities to be included, or to leverage some of the lessons learned that we've elevated from the work. But yes, thank you for that question. And I'll pause here for any others, because I feel like I've been just blazing forward.
We can open the QA round at the end of the session. I think that would be a
Sweet.
good idea.
Excellent. Okay. So I mentioned gosh, I want to say initially over a dozen programs that EF Plus Math started with. Math-Xteam, a tool developed by Mind Research. This is a resource that is designed to do a lot of what we've been talking about. Reduce extraneous cognitive load, kind of help students think about their fluency in math and foster persistence. So instead of disengaging or seeing something as maybe like they did something wrong, thinking about what they did right, trying to kind of hone the pieces of the process where they were, kind of justifying their thinking, they were outlining their thought process and what they could do differently next time. They're connecting it to and training their executive functioning skills. And one of the things that I think is really important for Math-Xteam or for EF Plus Math in general was that the idea was if we bring students into the development process of the applications of the technology and teachers, we'll develop a better product. And so the folks at Mind Research really included a lot of students, teachers in the design process. It was really exciting hearing students talk about their experiences and also some of the challenges that they've encountered in math learning. So you may be familiar with there's a variety of surveys folks have embedded in their curricula or in their math technology about students' anxiety. How are they feeling as they're getting involved in a particular activity? But when you look at the questions that are asked of the students, it's things like, how often do you quit in math because you feel anxious? So it kind of primes the student with a lot of anxious thoughts about what that activity is going to be like. And I think Math-Xteam does a really great job of flipping the script on that and thinking about the positives, trying to reduce that working memory, and trying to strengthen the idea that the student has the locus of control to be successful in that space. And so some of the executive functioning activities are happening sort of outside to get the student trained up to think about what did I do right? What could I do differently next time? What can I acknowledge that I'm doing well? And where are those kind of small celebrations I can have along the way that kind of highlight what's really working for me? And so I would say, structured routines, that's another big piece in Math-Xteam. And kind of that, like I mentioned, the explicit focus on planning, on thinking, on using strategies, but also just building confidence. Because if we're struggling with proficiency, we might feel like, it's something that we're never going to be successful at. And so I think this is a great resource. But the real power, I feel like, is co-developed with students. If we want them to be interested and excited, I think having students at the table during the design phase, not just at the end, is really important. This also, I would say, is visible with QThink. So QThink is another initiative, another program, another education technology resource funded by EF Plus Math. And basically the idea is it's able to help with multiple representations of particular problems. If we're talking about a word problem, it can kind of help train and hone students focusing on just the specific pieces of the problem that are most important. It encourages them to talk with their peers too about how they solved a particular problem, what went well, what they might do differently next time. And it also allows students to represent their mathematical learning in different ways, be it visual, verbal, symbolically. And so it really, I think, captures their math learning in the moment, and it encourages them to connect with their peers, which I feel like makes it more fun, more engaging, and is kind of meant to be used in conjunction with regular classroom activities. So really, here we're trying to take the distraction, the possible disinterest, and the fear of maybe being math not being kind of a topic that you're good at, and get you connected with your friends, get you thinking about what are the strategies I should be employing, what could I do differently next time, how would I explain this to one of my friends. And as you might be aware, I feel like when you're teaching something, you often learn much more about it. And so if you're teaching a peer, that is a net positive because you're explaining it in your own words. And oftentimes there's not a great opportunity to do that. You're sort of stuck with a math problem. You're kind of trying to figure it out within the boundaries of whoever authored that problem may have had in mind. But in this context, you're able to kind of describe it, use it, and apply it in your own words and with a peer, which I feel like is a huge positive. So we're making it more social. We're making it less focused on things that might be stressful to students, and we're giving them multiple ways to think about solving a math problem. So what do we know so far? Well, unfortunately, you may be familiar with a large initiative called the What Works Clearinghouse. As far as the Carnegie Learning Platform, there was no discernible effect. So this was basically a meta-analysis of what research has found on that particular platform. But I will say, that doesn't necessarily mean the book is written with respect to that first platform I talked about. It just means that of the high quality research that kind of made it into the synthesis for the What Works Clearinghouse, it didn't demonstrate a strong effect, an effect that we could feel confident in. Assessments, positive achievement gains, especially for struggling students. And so that seems to be a huge takeaway, and I think an early success with some of these programs. The idea that by right sizing it, by kind of deconstructing problems in a way that speaks to students' interests and particular struggles really helps elevate, especially for struggling students, where they might find success and how they can keep that momentum going. Now, as far as the EF Plus Math initiative, I'd say be on the lookout for our meta-analysis that I'm working on with some great colleagues presently. Early research, and we're doing sort of a portfolio synthesis across all of the programs, so there's a lot of them. Most of them are ed tech focused, but I will say too, another piece of I would say interest here was one of these programs was very focused on sports, basketball, soccer, and how you can use sports to demonstrate math learning, have students apply it. I didn't bring it up here because I know we're focused on math and ed tech, but that was a really exciting and some very promising results on it. It's called Fraction Ball, if you're interested. A really exciting way of kind of infusing sports that students are excited about and math learning, and it makes it fun and less scary, and gives them like a practical approach to using it, on a soccer field, on a basketball field. And there's currently some efforts in the works to kind of make it accessible even inside of a classroom, so you don't have to go out onto a basketball or soccer field. But Math Esteem and Q-Think. So positive associations with math learning. We're seeing some positive associations with interest, but we're also seeing, I think, a little bit of, I would say, the more students learn about math, the more challenging, I think like with any topic, the more you kind of understand it, the more you engage with it, the more you realize how much there is to learn. And so there is, I would say, some promising results in terms of increased interest, but also a little bit of, I would say, need for more exploration with respect to how students might be experiencing that. Is it kind of constructive and maybe kind of positive in the sense that they're seeing challenge, but they see it as within their locus of control? That's something that we don't know at the moment. But also there also seems to be some promising, but again, the results aren't fully finalized yet, associations to that metacognitive piece. One thing that I think is a big struggle with respect to how we measure this in the education technology space, oftentimes we have these tasks that have been developed a long time ago that get at cognitive functioning, that get at executive functioning, like a spanner task or a Tower of Hanoi or Hearts and Stars. There's a number of them, but the challenge is, do they transfer to math learning? Are they representative of my cognitive functioning on a daily basis? Because that's typically how these have been used, because when we're thinking about executive functioning as being measured by some of these older resources or older technologies or older tasks, I think there stands to, I think the field stands to benefit from maybe some new resources, some new measurements, some new technology to assess cognitive functioning, and see how that relationship evolves over time. And if there's a great way to embed it into ed tech, I think it's even better. But I would say, it looks like there's some promising results that are coming out of EF Plus Math, which I'm really excited about because I've been a part of the work for for years now, and seeing that portfolio effect when you take into account the programs, the data that they've collected over time, and kind of rolling up what are the key ingredients, what are the key components of ed tech that developers might need to focus on. And so I think we're seeing some exciting results, and I can't share too much about it right now because it's currently under development. But I do feel confident that we're seeing improvements in math learning, and I'm hopeful we may see some improvements in some other areas too, as we do that portfolio synthesis. But you can look up some of the current peer-reviewed research from MathXTeam and QThink, and kind of see for yourself what some of the phased results have looked like. And so here, I think this is sort of a call to action with the idea that, you look at how AI is being used across a variety of sectors. And I think that there's tremendous opportunity here to build off of what was started with EF Plus Math and some of these other programs, to really help hone and build metacognitive skills, executive functioning skills, and train that into a platform or to an ed tech innovation. And we know that individualized learning for students is huge, and AI, I think, can be a huge asset to that, right? So if we know that a kid has a particular interest or a problem might not be well suited to a particular group of students, how can we use AI to craft content and activities and learning that is right sized for the student? And two, when you're thinking about resources developed in the ed tech space, we're competing with video games and all kinds of other things that students get excited about. And so I know that for decades now, we've been trying to gamify and make programs and math learning exciting. I think we have some additional work to do there, but I'm hopeful that with some of the particularly student-led, student-centered approaches that EF Plus Math really encouraged, communication and collaboration with teachers and community members, that we can really elevate and excite and create something that springboards math learning. And so as we're thinking about the results from these studies, as we're thinking about executive functioning as a key core component of quality math learning and success in math, how can we embed that into our technology offerings? How can we embed that into an AI learning model that is able to scaffold students not only in their math learning, but also just thinking about the metacognitive skills, the executive functioning skills that can help train, reflection, sharing content and ideas with a peer, explaining math problems in different ways, using novel solutions to solve math problems. So I think there's a lot of room for opportunity here, and I'm hopeful that what we've been working on with EF Plus Math can help shape some of that. So I would say, as you're going into your own work and you're thinking about learning strategies, educational technology resources, how can we offload some of those emotional or distraction based pieces and really train students or help them understand how best their mind works, how best to train their executive functioning skills. And so in a space where there's a lot of I would say desire for your attention, there's a constant stream of technology and stuff that's just clamoring for your attention. And so as we're thinking about education resources, how can we change that? I think too, there's a lot of research coming out about just the impacts of social media and how that can detract, how that can cause extra stress. And I think in part some of that's connected to just the cognitive load, right? There's a constant stream of demands of our attention. And so it's no wonder that something like algebra, if it doesn't seem personally relevant, if we aren't having fun doing it, if we feel like we're not successful at it, it's no wonder that we're going to, disconnect from that, disengage from that, and maybe not see ourselves as a math learner. But I think we all can be successful in that space. I think our students can be successful in that space. We just have to flip the script and have it be something that's, I would say, co-designed, that's engaging for those students, and that taps into that executive functioning that we want to get on board with our math learning, as opposed to have it tied up with all kinds of extra stuff.
I have a question. May I ask?
Yeah. I think we're at a space where we can ask. Is that
Yeah,
right?
since you mentioned you mentioned that math is not important in like the AI while talking about AI in edtech right there. But there's like the huge thing and a huge uh, area to improve in. People are moving toward in trading and investing in stock, and people really wanted to invest in stock, but obviously they must have a bit knowledge about the statistics and math. And while
Yes.
computing and reading the charts and following the trend, they must need a little bit math to understand that what's going on next. So the analysis is very important. How do you feel that if you think that math is not certain important while talking about AI in edtech?
Um, can you phrase that again really quick, Matt? So,
Like since you mentioned that algebra is not very important, like for example,
oh yeah, yep,
while talking, while training the people and like training the young youth,
yes, yeah,
about the statistics and businesses, they must really need to know about the statistics and prediction and how the
correct.
business growth, right? So they must
Yes,
need, I
yes,
guess, a little bit math to get the quick understanding of where the trend going and reading the charts. Do you think it's important at the same time?
yes, 100% important. Yeah, and so if I was kind of giving you the impression that these math concepts or these math initiatives, the math itself is very important, and I think the problem comes in a space where students don't realize it's important, and so, for example, I'll use my own background where I think math got really exciting for me when I got into applied statistics, because I could use it to solve problems, to answer questions that I had, and that relies on algebra. It's very mathematical, right? So I would say one of the challenges is oftentimes if the math learning is apply this particular theorem, trust me, it works, but there's no connection back to the student, there's no connection back to something they might be interested in, then the brain sort of turns it off and thinks of it as not important, but it is important. And so that's kind of where I think the executive functioning piece is really critical to train, because if the constant demands for our attention pull us away from something we think is more important, then we're never going to get proficient. We're never going to see how we could use math in our daily lives. And so I would say, if I gave you the impression that the math learning itself isn't important, it's hugely important. It's the fact that sometimes we don't do a great job of communicating that, and I think the education technology support here can help with that. Does that get at your question?
Yeah, it makes sense, obviously, because yeah, there are certain, not obviously a certain, math is not just only place to study. Obviously, psychology is way more important to understand the business psychology and sort of thing. So obviously, I believe math is just a very limited portion here. But yes, I understand your point. Since we're talking about AI in education, so obviously, as long as our main goal is to build our, and as you're improving, as you're producing session, that cognitive intelligence is very important right there. So obviously,
Yes.
while all right.
Oh, I lost you for a second there.
Okay. So my question is very different, because I was reading the neuroscience, and at the same time I felt that AI is actually declining the cognitivity. It because
Oh, yes.
our
Yeah.
brain is something that really needs to know exercise to learn from maths, and to learn from the certain sort of complex problem, to retrain our
Yeah.
brain. So whenever there's a problem, come our brain just quickly, cognitive improve to improve our cognitive, intelligence. So do you think that adding AI in education will actually help this generation
Yeah.
in term of improving the cognitivity, or it may lead to the decline, because neuroscience studies shows a very different results.
Yes, yes. I think you're spot on, and I think there's an interesting study that just came out by I'm forgetting what the acronym stands for, PNOS. It was looking at the uh, critical thinking and kind of how folks reached the sort of conclusion of a particular problem if they used Google, if they used ChatGPT, or if they used a basic internet search. And the interesting thing is I think actually doing a basic internet search where you're kind of using key terms and you're investigating and exploring leads to deeper information gathering, more critical thought. I'm actually working on a platform. I'm working on a study related to a platform right now that seeks to kind of do that, where you may want to solve a problem and you just type your response into an AI chatbot and then it gives you your answer, and that leads to really shallow thinking, I believe, because you're just sort of trusting it, you're getting an answer, and then you're kind of moving on, and you're not thinking about like, why is the answer right or why is it wrong? How could it be answered differently? So there's a lot of as I think you're pointing out, there's a lot of cognition that's needed to understand why the answer is correct or incorrect, how you got to that answer, how it might be variable depending on the situation. And I do feel like with respect to AI making things like making us dumber, basically, I think there's definitely a challenge there, right? Where if you're just trusting it and you're just going off of what it says, then you aren't critically thinking. And so I think you can use it as a tool to help dive deeper, but the way that it's set up now, or at least I feel like the way that some platforms are encouraging us to kind of get the answer and then kind of move on, and it's almost like you're like, if you go back to your math in school and you're just taking the paper from your neighbor and turning that in as your homework, and you haven't learned anything. So I think that's a huge point, and if we want critical thinking, we want students to really dive in and understand why. I feel like it has to be helping foster critical thinking and foster executive functioning and why the math works, as opposed to just getting an answer. Does that tie into kind of what you're thinking? Because I do feel like you're right. There's a lot of
Yeah,
concern
yeah,
and a lot of
yeah. Thank you so much. Like, Joshua, you're understanding the point, because there's a huge confusion. Like, because it's a debate is happening right everywhere where I go.
yes,
Like, obviously, I personally felt this thing as a way moving forward and learning new things. And while I was using the GPT and the multiple LLMs, I feel like I'm adding towards declining my own cognitivity skill. But obviously, it's helping me to quick and done the task at faster pace. But at the same time, I feel like obviously it, because at the same time it's helping me to do the task quickly, but at the same time my own cognitivity and declining. It feels like, okay, am I going on a right way, or is it helpful for me future? Because at the same point, there's another debate, because AI would not replace you, but the people who use the AI, they will replace you. So that's the reason I'm still using it, and like, okay, I have to
yeah.
rely on.
Yeah. And I think I think it's I guess if I think back to kind of like the debates about like the internet, which there's like I remember when I was in my doctoral program, I didn't necessarily have to go to the library, and I remember some faculty members saying it was like such a shame, but I remember being like, well, I can get uh, you know any resource I want. I can just download it, or I can have another library mail it to me, and I don't have to spend days and days at the library. Everything is digital, which was hugely efficient. And so, but there's also a lot of negatives that come with that too. And so I think you're spot on. It, at the phase we're at now, it can definitely be used to sort of limit cognitive, questioning and critical thinking. There was a sci-fi movie I was watching recently. This was an old one, but it was the space where this society had developed an AI, and they were just using it to get all of their answers, and it started hallucinating. And then, decades and decades later, the society was declining, and nobody could figure out why. And it was because it had taken them off on a hallucination and nobody was critically thinking anymore. And so I think there's definitely a opportunity for that if we aren't careful, for sure. My hope was that with the executive functioning piece, maybe it can help us right size the challenge for the student and make it personally interesting. But there's definitely a dark side to that too, right?
Yeah, thank you so much, Joshua. It's so nice to have such great insight from your side. It really helped me to understand the future perspective of how the AI will gonna work for us, obviously.
Well, thank you for your question and insights there. Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
I think we have another question in the chat. If you can take that, I think we have just 9 minutes for that.
Okay, let me. Sorry, I'm trying to trying to get the chat. Sorry, I don't usually use Google. Let's see, where is the chat?
Maybe you can.
There we go. I got it.
Yeah.
Let's see. How can AI-driven interfaces dynamically distinguish between intrinsic load and extrinsic load? Might be off topic, but really curious. That's great. So thinking about intrinsic and extrinsic, I guess I'm immediately thinking of like intrinsic or extrinsic motivation. And one piece, this gets back to why I guess maybe I'm hopeful with AI, is that it can channel that intrinsic motivation. So I didn't learn why math was interesting to me until I started taking statistics classes, and before then it just seemed kind of boring. I had to make that connection myself, where I was thinking about research questions I wanted to ask and get answers on. I was thinking about solving problems, real world problems. And so I'm hopeful that maybe with some of these ed tech resources or some of these tools that are being developed, it can take that intrinsic load and sort of make it meaningful and exciting. And then things that are less important, like how are my peers doing, or what's happening outside, or maybe I'm not good at math. I would say those are the extraneous pieces where you're kind of getting insight, or you're getting distractions, be it from peers, from your environment. And I'm hoping it can flip to make it more personally relevant, personally meaningful. And that's one piece that I think I'm hopeful AI can do, because if you're thinking about how do I apply algebra to a particular problem, how do I apply, like, why would I need to learn about trigonometry? I vividly remember teachers, kind of stumbling at that question, and there's a lot that teachers are dealing with, and so that's not meant to be a criticism, but I would say I would be hopeful that AI could take that question and basically flip it into something that you could see immediately interesting and exciting, and thereby making you more likely to continue on and learn about it and apply it. So that's my hope, but I don't think that's off topic at all. I think there's also negative and positive intrinsic and extrinsic load. I misspoke. I would say feeling like you're not good at math, or feeling like students that look like you are not good at math, is a negative intrinsic load. And I would hope that by right sizing the challenge, it could help with that as well. Again, if we have one-on-one tutoring, this becomes less relevant because the tutor is able to help us with that. But that's kind of what I would say on that front. Let's see. And let me, well, I still have everybody. Let me stop sharing and let me put the link to AirDiff in the chat. And I'll keep answering questions. Let me grab the EF Plus Math. So if you want to learn more about EF Plus Math, here is the link in the chat. Let me see if I missed any other questions. Similar to our conversation, this paper from Anthropic on skill formation for programming could be of interest to folks here. I'll have to check that out. That sounds really interesting. Seeing if I missed any other questions. But I'd be curious from everybody's perspective here. I know there's folks that are hopeful for AI. One of my hopes is that because teaching, because medicine, because there's a lot of things that require human expertise, my hope is that it serves as a net positive and is able to help us focus more on innovation as opposed to some of the more basic activities that might take up our cognitive load as you're working throughout the day. We all kind of aspire to be in that flow state where we're creative, we're focused, and that's harder to do if you have a bunch of small tasks that AI can help with. But it could also stand to make us less proficient if we rely on it all the time. But I'd be curious to know what others think on that.
I think there is a very thin line between falling to that area and falling to this area. So it all depends on how you make use of AI. I think in any subject, be it maths or be it anything else. So we are just reaching the limit, which is like we are reaching that in 4 minutes. So I would take those minutes to thank you so much for your amazing session. And personally, I learned a lot. And I never thought that, maths could be, I thought I was the only one. This was very personal to me because I always think I'm very bad at maths. But after your session, I think I need to, revisit my thoughts and start learning maths again with the help of some tools. So thank you so much. It was an honor hosting you. And thank you, everyone, for joining.
Yeah, thank you so much. I had a great time talking with you all, and I hope it was helpful. So thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
It was nice. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.